I'm Chloe, and I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. I only found out because someone slipped and left the invitation on my kitchen counter. They planned everything behind my back, but they forgot one thing. I don't stay quiet. And if they thought leaving me out would keep things peaceful, they just started a storm. Where are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments. I want to know who's listening. I should have known something was wrong when I saw the envelope. It sat on my kitchen counter, ivory with gold-embossed trim, practically humming with importance. My name wasn't on it. It wasn't even sealed. Just resting there like a mistake. Inside, tucked carefully between shimmering tissue paper, was a wedding invitation. Elegant calligraphy, swirls of dusty rose and sage. I read the names once, then twice. Vanessa Rose Langston and Elliot James Whitmore request the honor of your presence, Vanessa. My baby sister. My ears buzzed. I dropped onto a bar stool, heart pounding like I'd run a mile. I hadn't heard a word about her getting engaged. Not a text, not a whisper. And now there was a wedding. How long had they been planning this? I stared at the invite like it might rearrange itself and include a note that explained everything. A joke. A surprise. Anything to justify why my hands were shaking. My family never invited me to things formally. We just talked, called, showed up. But I didn't get this invitation. It had been left here by accident, probably when Mom dropped off that casserole last night. It wasn't meant for me at all. Fury shot through my chest like a lit match. I didn't even grab a coat. I just grabbed my keys. 15 minutes later, I was pounding on my parents' front door like I was the police. Mom opened it with her usual serene face, as if I hadn't just nearly broken the wood. "Chloe," she said, smiling faintly. "That was fast." "Fast," my voice cracked. "How long were you planning to hide this from me?" Her smile didn't waver. She stepped back to let me in. "I wasn't hiding anything. We just thought you wouldn't be interested." That hit like a slap. I stepped into the living room. Dad sat on the couch in his flannel robe, sipping coffee like it was a lazy Sunday. "Did Vanessa ask you to keep this from me?" I demanded. "Is that what this is?" Dad sighed. He didn't even look surprised to see me furious. Just annoyed. "Chloe," he said, setting his mug down, "not everything has to be about you." The words dropped like bricks. "I'm not making this about me," I said through clenched teeth. "You made this about me the second you left me out." Mom folded her arms across her perfect beige cardigan. "We didn't leave you out. We simply didn't want drama. Vanessa wanted a small, elegant wedding. You have a tendency to overreact." "I'm reacting because you lied," I snapped. "You planned a wedding, my sister's wedding. And I had to find out from a misdelivered invitation." "You always get so emotional," Dad muttered. "I'm emotional." I laughed, bitter and stunned. "My own family treats me like I'm disposable and I'm emotional." No one answered. The silence stretched so long I could hear the humming of the old fridge. "Just tell me," I said quietly. "Tell me what I did wrong." Mom smoothed her cardigan like she could iron the tension out of the room. "Vanessa felt you might overshadow her day. With your career, your energy, she wanted peace." "Peace!" My voice dropped to a whisper. "You think this is peace?" I turned, walked slowly to the fireplace, stared at the family photos lining the mantel. Vanessa at prom, Vanessa at college graduation. Vanessa and Mom in matching spa robes, no pictures of me. I wasn't in the wedding. I wasn't even in the living room anymore. I was out of the story. The next morning, I woke up feeling like someone had rearranged the world in my sleep. The rage was still there, hot and trembling beneath my ribs, but something else had taken root overnight. A flicker. A question, what if I just showed up, not uninvited, not demanding, just willing. I found Vanessa at our usual cafe, Leona's on Broad Street. We hadn't been there together in months, but I knew her favorites hadn't changed. She always sat outside when the weather allowed, near the fountain with the chipped lion statue. When I got there, she was already mid-sip on her iced tea, scrolling through her phone, legs crossed, breezy in her pale yellow sundress. She didn't even look surprised to see me. "Vanessa," I said softly, sitting on the far end of the bench. "I figured you'd be here." Her mouth curled up faintly, but not into a smile. "Of course, you always figure things out eventually." I ignored the jab, no point feeding it. "I saw the invitation," I said. I guess it wasn't meant for me." She swirled the ice in her glass. "You weren't supposed to find it, no." I nodded. Silence hung thick between us, sticky as the humidity. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I just want to understand." She glanced at me sideways. "It's not that complicated, Chloe. I didn't think you'd want to be part of it. You didn't ask. And you would have said yes just to take over. You'd offer to plan everything, fix everything, like always." I breathed in slow. "Maybe, but not this time. I just want to be your sister, just want to show up." She didn't answer. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the table. "I make good money now. If there's anything left that needs covering, flowers, vendors, anything, I'd love to help. You deserve something beautiful." Vanessa stared at the envelope, her face unreadable. After a pause, she shrugged. "If you really want to. I guess the flower show isn't finalized. The florist's been annoying, asking for upgrades I don't care about. I can handle it," I said quickly, maybe too eagerly. "Let me take care of the whole thing, something special." She blinked at me, her voice flat. "Do what you want." My chest tightened, but I kept my tone light. "Romantic spring, right? That was the theme." Vanessa sipped her tea again and looked away. "Sure." The moment was thin and brittle, like glass that could crack under a breath. But I took her permission and held on to it like a lifeline. We sat like that for a few more minutes, me at one end of the bench, her at the other. Not quite sisters, not quite strangers. There was a breeze, and I tried to believe it meant something was shifting. When I finally stood to leave, I hesitated. "I'll make it amazing, Ness, you'll see." She didn't say anything, just adjusted her sunglasses and turned back to her phone. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, trying to slow my heart. It's a start, I told myself. Maybe not a good one, but it wasn't nothing. She hadn't told me to stop. She hadn't ripped up the envelope. She hadn't laughed in my face. That counted, didn't it? And if there was even a shred of space between us that I could reach through, then maybe, just maybe, I could still matter. That's all I wanted. Not control, not credit, just to be seen. Blossom & Co. sat on the corner of King and Beaufane like it knew it was better than everywhere else. The windows gleamed, sunlight refracted through hanging crystal vases, and everything smelled like fresh beginnings. It was the kind of place that whispered, "Only the most cherished people deserve flowers like these." I stepped inside, and the air shifted. Cool, fragrant, alive. "Good morning." A man with sleeve tattoos and a white linen apron greeted me behind the counter. "You must be Chloe." His voice was warm, not performative. For a moment I just stood there, soaking in the calm energy of the room. "Yes," I managed, finally moving toward him. "I'm here for the Langston Whitmore wedding, my sister's wedding." He gave me a soft nod, like he understood more than I was saying. "I'm Adrian. We've been waiting on confirmation for that event. Everything's been vague." Vague, the perfect word for how they've been treating me. "Well, I'm confirming it now," I said, setting my purse on the counter. "I want to take over the entire floral package, premium-level ceremony and reception." He raised a brow. "All right, may I ask, what kind of atmosphere are you imagining?" I swallowed the knot in my throat. "Romantic spring, not just roses and pastels, but emotion, movement, soft archways, petals falling like it's meant to happen that way. Something that makes people stop and feel it before they even realize why." Adrian's lips twitched. "That's not a budget-friendly vision." "I'm not asking for budget-friendly," I said. "I'm asking for unforgettable." He nodded once. "Let's make some magic." For the next hour, I sank into the details like it was my job, and maybe it was in a way. Adrian pulled swatches of flowers and textures. I approved garden roses, trailing jasmine, baby's breath for softness, and even asked for pale lavender ranunculus, Vanessa's favorite, though she hadn't told me that in years. We designed a flower arch that twisted upward like a fairy tale vine, coordinated petal drops for the aisle at sunset, mini arrangements at every table with subtle movement, nothing rigid. It all had to feel like something that grew on purpose, like love that made sense. Adrian leaned back, smiling. "This is going to be breathtaking." "Good," I said, taking a breath. "She deserves that. Vanessa always dreamed of something beautiful." He looked at me a beat longer. "You clearly love her." The words caught me off guard. I gave a small smile. "She's my little sister, even when she forgets that." We finalized the deposit, well above what my mother had probably authorized before dropping the ball. I signed it, no hesitation. "She's lucky to have you doing this," Adrian added, handing over the confirmation slip. I tucked it into my wallet and gave a small nod, even if something inside me twisted. Lucky. I wasn't sure that word had ever applied to Vanessa and me, not in the same breath. Driving home, I passed the church where Vanessa and I used to go for youth choir, back when we were still giggling in the back pew and stealing each other's bracelets. Back before the balance shifted, when I became too much and she became the sun. I parked outside my apartment and just sat in the car for a while, the AC humming. Then I opened my phone and typed slowly. To Vanessa, the flower show's all set. I think it'll be something special. Hope you love it. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then finally, Vanessa, okay. Thanks, that was it, no emoji. No, you didn't have to. No curiosity, just a cold, polite wall. But maybe, I told myself, polite was better than silent. That night I sat in my tiny kitchen with a glass of red wine and the sketch of the flower setup spread across the table. I stared at the arch until it blurred. Vanessa was going to walk beneath that arch, smile for photos. Maybe tilt her head just enough to see the wisteria I'd handpicked. Would she stop? Would she feel it? Would she even know it came from me? I didn't know, but I couldn't stop myself from trying, not yet. Because even now, even after the humiliation and the silence, I wanted one thing more than anything, for her to see me again. Not as the overachieving sister, not as the one who made things complicated, but as someone who still showed up. Quietly, fully, even when it hurt. The venue looked like a dream, at least from the outside. Whitewashed brick wrapped in climbing ivy, windows tall and arched like something out of a southern bridal catalog. As I pulled into the lot that morning, my stomach twisted like I was 15 again, arriving late to a school function I hadn't been told about. But this time, I wasn't sneaking in. I was helping. Arms full of candles, my phone buzzing in my back pocket with delivery confirmations, I walked through the side entrance like I belonged there. Inside, the ballroom was still bare. Just rows of tables, half draped in linen, and a giant arch sitting at the far end, waiting for its flowers. My flowers. Adrian and his team were already there, arranging roses with surgical precision. He spotted me and gave a quick wave, hands full of ivy. "Chloe, you weren't kidding. This is going to be something." I smiled, tension uncoiling a little. "I figured if I'm going to crash the party, I might as well make it look perfect." He laughed and got back to work. I moved toward the altar area, unboxing tea lights and votives. No one had told me to come. I didn't have a role or a name card, but I knew what needed doing. Candles near the arch, petals down the aisle, lanterns along the wall sconces. Soft touches no one else thought to add. That's the thing about being the invisible sister. You learn to make magic behind the curtain. I was placing a cluster of candles when a soft voice came from behind me. "You're kind of saving this whole thing." I turned, startled. A young woman in lavender satin held a box of table numbers. Her blonde hair was curled into loose waves, a little frizzy from the humidity. "Sorry," I asked. She stepped closer, her smile shy but sincere. "Clara, Vanessa's roommate from college. I'm one of the bridesmaids." I nodded, still unsure if I was being teased. She gestured to the room. "No one else has done half of this. I think Vanessa was expecting it to just appear." I let out a small laugh, sharp with surprise. "That sounds like her." Clara lowered her voice. "Honestly, you're the only one actually making this feel like a wedding. I just wanted to say thank you." Something tight in my chest gave a little. I hadn't realized how badly I needed someone to say that. "Thank you," I said quietly. We fell into a rhythm, arranging table numbers and centerpieces together. She didn't ask why I wasn't a bridesmaid. She didn't flinch when I said I was the sister. She just worked beside me like I belonged there. That alone felt like a gift. An hour later, the arch was done. Cascading roses, blush, and ivory curved like a watercolor painting. Vines wrapped delicately around the base. The aisle was dressed in petals, soft as feathers. I stood back, wiping my hands on a napkin, heart fluttering as footsteps clicked across the floor. Vanessa. She walked in slowly, a clipboard in hand, bridesmaids trailing behind her. Her hair was in rollers, face bare but glowing. She stopped halfway down the aisle. Her eyes scanned the arch, the lanterns, the rows of flickering votives. She didn't say a word. Finally, she looked at me and said flatly, "You didn't have to do all this." It wasn't quite a thank you, but it wasn't a slap either. I shrugged, keeping my voice light. I wanted to. It looks nice, right? She gave a small nod and turned away, already giving directions to a makeup artist about lighting. Her voice was sharp, dismissive, like none of this really mattered, like I didn't really matter. I held my breath as she walked past, a foot of space between us that might as well have been a canyon. Then came the final blow. My mother entered from the other side of the ballroom, clutching a clipboard, followed by an event coordinator and two gossipy aunts. She wore pearls and lipstick and that expression she always saved for guests she liked more than her own children. Her eyes brushed over me, paused, and then moved on like I was part of the scenery. No nod, no smile, no acknowledgement. She walked past me like I wasn't even there. I stood perfectly still, hands still dusty from the flower stems. I'd cut my fingers open trying to get those vines just right. Spent my own money, my own time, my own heart. And not one person from my own family looked at me like I belonged. Clara touched my arm gently, unsure. "You okay?" I nodded, because that's what I do. I nod, I smile, I hold it in. But inside, something small and angry curled into a ball. This was supposed to be a bridge, a way back in. Instead, I was being used like a prop with a wallet. And that was when the first true thought of revenge brushed through my mind. Not fire and fury, but something cleaner. Something they'd never see coming. The courtyard smelled like rosemary and regret. It was the only place in the venue that felt remotely calm. Stone benches, potted herbs, a little trickling fountain in the middle. A break from the soft chaos of the ballroom, where bridal music played on loop and bridesmaids moved like sleepwalkers with lipstick. I sat near the edge, checking my phone, sipping warm water from a paper cup someone had handed me hours ago. No new messages. Not from Vanessa. Not from my parents. Just a red reaction from Clara on a photo I'd posted to my story of the flower arch. It showed the corner of the ballroom bathed in light, petals glowing like something out of a dream. Vanessa hadn't reposted it. She hadn't even liked it. Still, I held onto hope like a splinter under skin. She stepped into the courtyard while I was scrolling, wearing a satin robe embroidered with bride in curling letters across her back. Her hair was now curled and pinned, her lashes so long they cast shadows on her cheeks. A bridesmaid trailed behind her, handing her a smoothie. I stood, brushing my dress flat. "Hey!" She glanced over, no smile. "Just taking a breather," she said, not asking if she'd interrupted anything. I nodded, pretending it didn't sting. We stood there a moment in the mild Charleston breeze. Spring sunlight warmed the stone underfoot, but I felt cold. "I wanted to ask," I said softly. "The floral showcase, the arch, the petals, the aisle runners, did it feel like the theme you imagined?" Vanessa sipped her smoothie. "What do you mean?" "You said romantic spring," I reminded her. "I tried to match that, with the floral choreography and the color tones," and she laughed, not warmly, not with me. "Floral choreography," she repeated, eyebrows raised. One of the bridesmaids chuckled from behind her. Vanessa turned, gesturing vaguely. "I mean, it's pretty, but all that old-fashioned stuff. It's kind of embarrassing." Embarrassing. She said it loud enough for the others to hear. I felt my spine stiffen, but I smiled tightly. "Oh," Vanessa took another sip. "It's just a bit much, I wanted modern, clean, not Victorian fairy garden." Another bridesmaid giggled and someone muttered, "That's exactly what I was trying to say earlier." My throat went dry. My heart kept beating, but it felt disconnected, like it didn't belong in my body anymore. Vanessa barely looked at me. Just turned toward her friends, already mid-conversation about the cake tasting that happened 3 weeks ago. I'd offered to help then, too. They hadn't needed me. They needed my wallet, my silence, my willingness to disappear after the flowers bloomed. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. In the hallway, I leaned against a column and exhaled. I wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not while people who hadn't lifted a finger would spend the rest of the day posing for photos beside things I'd built. I texted Clara. "Me, heading out early. Let me know if you need help with cleanup." Her reply came fast. "Clara, wait, are you okay? Please don't go just yet." But I was already halfway across the parking lot. Back in my apartment, I sat on the floor by the sliding glass door, watching sunlight spill over the hardwood. I'd taken off my shoes but hadn't changed out of my dress. I couldn't seem to move. I pulled out my phone again, opened the photo of the arch. The roses had looked like they were leaning toward each other, like they were in love. I'd thought Vanessa might see that. She hadn't even looked at the details. My heart thudded dully. I felt stupid, not just for spending the money, but for hoping it would fix something. I whispered into the silence, "Why are they doing this to me?" But no one answered. That night, my apartment was too quiet. The kind of quiet that hums in your ears and makes you question if you even exist in the space you call home. I sat in the dark, back pressed against my couch, knees to my chest, scrolling through the photos from earlier that day. The flower arch, the candles, the wisteria draped just right over the edges. None of it looked like it belonged to me. It looked like something a stranger might have done for someone else. And maybe that's exactly what I was now, a stranger. I tapped on a photo of the ballroom, zooming in on a small corner where a bridesmaid had snapped a selfie in front of my candles. Her caption read, "The details smiling face with heart eyes, Vanessa's big day perfect vibes, not a word about who arranged it, or how it got there, or who paid for it." I flipped to the next image. The garden arch, backlit by the afternoon sun. I remembered sweating through my dress trying to position it just right. In that moment, the tears came without permission. I didn't sob. There wasn't enough energy left for that. They just slipped down quietly, soaking into the collar of my shirt. I whispered to myself, barely audible, "What did I do so wrong?" The question wasn't new. I'd been asking it since childhood in different forms, when Mom forgot to show up at my science fair, when Dad brushed off my first promotion, when Vanessa started turning every holiday into a performance about how she was the favorite and I should just stop trying so hard. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, suddenly aware of how cold the room had become. My apartment had always been a refuge, neutral, clean, mine. But tonight it felt like a waiting room. Like I was waiting to be called back into a life I hadn't been invited to. My phone buzzed. One new text. It was Clara. "Clara, you left so fast. I'm sorry about what Vanessa said. That was awful." I stared at the message, unsure what to say. She didn't owe me anything, but her words cut through the fog a little. "Me, thanks, I just needed to get out of there." "Clara, honestly, I think you're the only person who actually made this wedding feel special. I just wanted you to know that." I closed my eyes, letting the message sit with me for a long moment. One person saw me today. It shouldn't have to be enough, but tonight it was all I had. I eventually made my way to bed, still in the same dress. The sheets felt too clean, too cold, like they weren't mine anymore. I lay awake for what felt like hours, trying to trace the moment things changed between us. Me and Vanessa. Me and my parents. Me and whatever version of a family we used to be. Was it when I left home for college and didn't come back every weekend? When I stopped asking for their approval and started building a life of my own? Or was it always like this, and I just didn't see it until I got tired of shrinking to fit their comfort? I flipped onto my side and pulled the blanket over my head, willing sleep to find me. It didn't, just more thoughts. More flashes of Vanessa's dismissive voice. "That old-fashioned stuff, it's embarrassing." She said it like she hadn't watched me for hours in the courtyard, trying to get it perfect. Like I hadn't spent 2 months rent to give her something she wouldn't forget, except she already had. Sometime after midnight, I got up and stood barefoot in the kitchen, sipping lukewarm water from a chipped mug. My reflection in the microwave's black screen stared back. Mascara smudged. Hair pinned back in a limp knot, shoulders hunched like I was waiting for a blow that had already landed. I looked like someone who had been erased, like I'd written a whole chapter in their story, and they'd edited me out before printing the final copy. The next morning started like nothing had happened. The light came in through the blinds just the same, slicing across the hardwood in perfect lines, as if my world hadn't cracked in half less than 24 hours ago. But I didn't move from the couch. I hadn't slept. Not really. Just drifted in and out of numb silence, my thoughts looping like a song with one verse. Why are they doing this to me? I wasn't even crying anymore. I think I'd run out of tears. There was just this slow dripping ache. It wasn't even sharp anymore. It was dull, pulsing behind my ribs like my body had decided it was safer not to feel everything at once. I held my phone like it was a lifeline, but I wasn't expecting anything. I hadn't heard from Vanessa. Not since that cold courtyard slap disguised as a laugh, and I hadn't reached out either. I didn't have it in me. I didn't want to make the first move anymore. I was always the one making the first move. And then it happened. At 8:14 a.m., my phone lit up with a buzz. One notification, family group chat. I hesitated. The group chat had always felt like a house I'd been locked out of but could still see through the windows. Updates I wasn't part of, jokes I didn't understand, photos I hadn't been there to take. Still, something made me click. The message was short, brutal, casual. "I hope she won't be at Vanessa's wedding." That was it. No emojis, no context, no punctuation, just that. I stared at it, not even breathing, because I knew exactly what had happened. It was from Mom. She'd meant to send it to Vanessa directly, a private message, something whispered behind a hand, but instead she sent it to the group, to me. And within seconds, maybe 20, maybe 30, it vanished, deleted, replaced with that bland little placeholder text. This message was removed, but I had seen it. I had seen everything. The world didn't tilt. It didn't shatter. It just froze. I sat there completely still, my thumb hovering over the screen, eyes locked on the space where her words had been. My pulse roared in my ears, but my face stayed blank. Not interested. Not busy. Not forgotten. They hoped I wouldn't come. They'd been hoping, planning that I'd stay away. The truth of it settled like ash on my skin, so quiet, so final. I'd spent the last few weeks convincing myself that this was a misunderstanding, that I'd just been overlooked, that maybe Vanessa had been overwhelmed, that maybe I'd made too many mistakes, said the wrong thing, been too much, and they were just tired, that I could fix it if I just tried harder, loved harder, gave more. But no, they didn't want me there. Not because I was dramatic, not because I was too loud, not even because I'd messed up some long-forgotten family code, but because my presence was inconvenient, because the story looked better without me in it, because I had learned how to stand up straight, how to take up space, how to live a life that didn't orbit around their approval, and that made me uninvitable. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. I'd done that already. This wasn't sadness anymore. This was something else. This was clarity, because once you see the truth, it's impossible to go back. I stood up from the couch slowly, like I was waking up from a long, fevered sleep. My legs ached. My arms felt too heavy. But I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it like it meant something. And then I whispered the words out loud just to hear them. "This is what they really think of me." The sentence hung in the air, honest, undeniable, cold. I stared out the window, watching a couple walk their dog down the street. They looked peaceful, laughing. I wondered if they had family who loved them without condition. Or if they, too, had learned that love in some homes was just a performance, and the moment you stopped playing your role, the curtain dropped. But I wasn't going to play anymore. I opened my phone again, scrolled through old texts, photos of birthdays, screenshots of Vanessa's wedding Pinterest boards from 2 years ago, ones she'd sent to me back when we still talked like sisters, back when she wanted me in her life. I stared at those messages and didn't feel sad. I felt ready. They wanted me gone. Fine. They didn't invite me. Fine. They thought I'd fade quietly into the background like a smudge they could crop out of their perfect family portrait. Fine. Let them have their wedding. Let them have their lies and their carefully rehearsed roles. But they don't get to have me. Not the part of me that still begged for scraps. Not the part of me that still believed this was all somehow my fault. And certainly not the part of me that's about to remind them exactly what it looks like when I show up on my own terms. Because I'm done apologizing for existing. And the storm they tried to keep out, I am the storm. There's a kind of freedom that comes after devastation, not the peaceful kind, not the serene everything's going to be okay kind. No, this was sharp, bright, electric, like the moment before lightning hits. I stood in the middle of my apartment, barefoot and breathing hard, staring at my phone screen as my thumb hovered over the final book now button. Beachfront bungalow resort. One-day rental. All-inclusive bonfires, string lights, open-air dance floor, private chef setup. Saturday, wedding day. Mine. I wasn't going to wait for permission anymore. I was going to reclaim the day. Maybe it was petty, maybe it was theatrical, maybe it was exactly what they deserved. But after months of being erased, this wasn't about them anymore. This was about me showing up for myself, loudly. I hit confirm. The screen blinked, and just like that, it was real. The guest list came together faster than I expected. I sent digital invites to friends from work, my college roommate, a few neighbors who always smiled in the hallway, and a dozen family members who never took sides but always hugged me too long. I included the cousins I knew were probably going to the wedding, but hoped would remember who kept their secrets as kids. I added Maya, my best friend since sophomore year of high school, the one person who never wavered. When I called her and told her what I'd done, she didn't laugh. She didn't gasp. She just said, "Finally," like she'd been waiting for this version of me to show up. "I've got dresses, playlists, and a backup margarita blender," she added. "I'm bringing everything." By Thursday, deliveries were arriving at the resort in my name, crates of candles, woven lanterns, a hand-painted welcome sign that read, "This is a celebration of joy, not perfection." I'd chosen it on impulse. It felt right. Still, by Friday night, the doubt crept in. What if no one showed? What if the cousins stayed loyal? What if this turned into a solo party with one very overdressed woman lighting her own bonfire? I didn't sleep. Again. But Saturday morning, the sky broke open in a perfect coastal blue, the kind that made the ocean shimmer like glass, and I told myself that even if I danced alone, it would be the most honest dancing I'd ever done. I arrived early to the beach bungalow. It was stunning, wooden walkways, fringed umbrellas, wild grass that moved with the wind. The staff was already arranging tables, spreading white gauze over driftwood, and setting pineapples next to platters of grilled citrus. Music drifted softly from hidden speakers. I changed into the white linen dress I'd bought months ago for no reason. Flowy, simple, the kind of thing that moved like poetry. I didn't wear it because I wanted attention. I wore it because it felt like me. The first guest to arrive was Maya. She burst onto the patio in a cascade of color, her hair twisted up in a silk scarf, sunglasses oversized and dramatic. When she saw me, her eyes widened. "Chloe, you look like a goddess," she whispered, grabbing both my hands. I laughed, actually laughed for the first time in days. "You're just saying that because I'm giving you free pineapple tacos." "No," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I'm saying it because it's true. Look at this. Look at you." More guests followed. My neighbor from down the hall. A friend from college I hadn't seen in years. And then Cousin Ben, then Zoe. Then Lydia. One by one they arrived, cheeks flushed from the sun, holding drinks and hugging me like they'd been waiting for this gathering forever. "This is way better than the wedding," Ben said under his breath, handing me a fruit skewer. "That ballroom was suffocating." "You always know how to make things fun," Zoe added, slipping off her shoes and dancing barefoot in the sand. I nodded, smiling, though a part of me still flickered with uncertainty. Because even though this moment felt rich with joy, I knew the silence from the other side was building. I hadn't checked my phone in an hour. But as the sun dipped lower, as the fire pit crackled, and the ticky lights came alive against the twilight, I started to care a little less. "This," I whispered to Maya as we toasted coconut water under the stars. "This is the version of me they were never ready for." She clinked her glass to mine. They better brace themselves. It started like a slow tide coming in, cousins I hadn't seen in years trickling onto the sand in waves of color and quiet apologies. First came Jonah, carrying a beach chair and looking sheepish. "I wasn't sure if I should come," he said, avoiding my eyes. "But when I saw the invite, I remembered how you used to sneak me candy at Grandma's house. You were always the fun one." He smiled, and I realized I was holding my breath. I nodded and hugged him. Then came Ella, then Gabe. And then, of all people, Zoe arrived barefoot, holding her heels in one hand and a mason jar cocktail in the other. She kissed my cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world and whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner about all of it." I didn't ask what she meant. I just said, "I'm glad you're here." By the time the sky turned gold, the patio was alive with voices. Laughter floated over the sound of the waves. Someone put on a playlist that made the string lights seem to glow warmer. Kids ran barefoot through the sand. A few aunts, yes, aunts, texted me selfies from the event captioned, "We're staying here, much more our vibe." I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had hoped for a few people. But this was joy. Organic, untamed, uncoordinated joy. People weren't gathered for obligation. They weren't rehearsing polite conversations or pretending they liked the chicken. They were here because they wanted to be. Because they chose me. I stood near the edge of the boardwalk, watching it all, coconut drink in one hand, sandals forgotten somewhere behind me, and for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like I was begging to be included. I was included. I was at the center of something that felt light and real and entirely mine. Maya found me standing there, half lost in thought, and bumped her shoulder against mine. "You're glowing," she said. I laughed. "I think it's just the string lights." "No," she said, looking at me. "It's you. You're not holding anything in anymore." That made me pause. She was right. I wasn't holding it in. I wasn't forcing a smile or overthinking my every move. I wasn't checking to see if Vanessa had finally texted or if Mom had noticed the guest list. I wasn't trying to decode silence. I was just being. "This is what I wanted," I said softly. "Not a show, not revenge, just something light and joyful. Something that doesn't feel like punishment for existing." Maya nodded. "You created it. You gave yourself the party they never would have." She lifted her glass and we clinked drinks again. "You know what I'm proud of," she added. I looked at her. "That you didn't burn down their wedding," she grinned. "You just made something better." I smirked. "There's still time." We both burst into laughter. It wasn't bitter laughter, it was full. As night took hold, the fire pit turned into the heartbeat of the evening. Guests gathered around it, blankets on their shoulders, voices low, stories being told under the stars. Someone passed around roasted fruit skewers. A playlist hummed softly in the background. I sat between Maya and Cousin Gabe, legs curled beneath me, the fire dancing across our faces. Someone snapped a photo just then. Me, mid-laugh, cheeks glowing, eyes crinkled. And when I saw it later, I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I looked free. The girl who'd spent weeks wondering if she was invisible. She was nowhere in sight. It was just a short video, 40 seconds, maybe less. Maya had taken it on her phone without me even realizing. Later, while we sat on the bungalow steps sipping ginger beer and watching the ocean swallow the last of the sun, she showed it to me. "Post it," she said, nudging me. "Let them see you." I hesitated. "Is that petty?" "Not if it's the truth." So I did. It was simple. A slow pan of the beach glowing with ticky lights. Laughter over bonfire crackles, sparklers in hands, dancing feet in the sand. And at the center, me. In that white dress, hair windblown, smiling like I'd finally remembered what it meant to be whole. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to throw your own celebration." No permission needed. I didn't expect what happened next. Within minutes, the likes rolled in. First, friends, then coworkers. Then names I hadn't seen in years, cousins, second cousins, old family friends. And then the comments started. Not just likes, not just hearts, but words. "You deserved better." "This is the real celebration." "This is joy." And then the messages, texts, missed calls. At first, I ignored them. Until the number of missed calls climbed to 10 from my mom, 6 from my dad, 3 from Vanessa. I stared at my phone like it might bite me. Maya glanced over. "You okay?" I nodded. They saw it. She didn't ask who they were, she knew. The screen lit up again, my father's name, the ringtone sharp and loud in the silence. This time I answered. I stepped away from the firelight into the shadows of the bungalow porch, holding the phone to my ear. His voice came in like a storm. "You ruined her wedding." No greeting, no hesitation, just rage. My fingers gripped the wooden railing. I closed my eyes for one breath, two. Then I answered, calm, even. "I saw Mom's message," I said. "The one where she said she hoped I wouldn't come." Silence, not denial, just static. "You don't get to silence me anymore," I continued. "You don't get to shame me into disappearing, not after everything I did, not after everything you chose not to see." There was a pause, and then the line went dead. No apology, no explanation, just the sound of him hanging up. I stared at the phone, heart steady now. Like the storm had passed through me, not around me. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of them, not of what they thought. I turned back toward the fire where Maya was waiting with a blanket and a knowing look. "They're spiraling, huh?" she asked. I nodded. "They're not used to me taking up space." She smiled. "They better get used to it." The party had started to settle into that late-night rhythm, softer music, dimmer lights, people curled into smaller conversations. The fire pit burned low and warm, casting a quiet glow on the sand. I was sitting cross-legged on a cushion, wrapped in a throw blanket, laughing at one of Maya's terrible stories from high school when I saw the headlights. They cut across the path to the beach, sudden and jarring. Someone whispered, "Is that?" but I already knew. The car door slammed. Footsteps crunched fast over gravel. And then Vanessa, hair falling loose from its updo. Makeup streaked down her cheeks. Her heels were off. She carried them in one hand like she'd run through grass. Her eyes searched the patio wildly until they landed on me. Everyone fell silent. The music kept playing, but no one was listening. I stood slowly, unsure of what was about to happen. She looked at me like she hadn't seen me in years, not really seen me. And then, barely above a whisper, she said, "I didn't know." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know how deep it all went." No one moved. No one dared interrupt. She took a shaky breath. "Mom and Dad. They told me you didn't want to be involved, that you'd always been jealous, that you'd ruin things if I let you in, and I believed them, I believed them." Her voice broke fully then, and she dropped her heels to the sand. I wanted to say something sharp. I wanted to hold on to my anger, but instead I stepped forward and reached for her hand. "I know," I said quietly, "but you're here now." She looked down, then up. Her eyes filled with tears. "Chloe, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And I saw it, finally, really saw it. The little sister I used to protect. The one who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during car rides. The one I lost under layers of manipulation, performance, and family scripts we never wrote. I pulled her into a hug, and she clung to me like she was drowning. "Then let's end it here," I whispered in her ear. "Let's end the part where we let them decide who we are to each other." She nodded, pulling back, wiping her cheeks. The crowd around us was still hushed, watching. I turned toward them and lifted my glass. "This," I said, "is the only wedding I care about tonight." Laughter broke through the tension. Cheers erupted around us, and someone, probably Maya, turned the music up again. Vanessa looked at me, eyes wide. "Wait, are you serious?" "Completely," I said, grinning. "Your hair's still kinda bridal. Let's call it poetic." She laughed through tears. And just like that, I gave her the wedding they never would have let her have, free, unscripted, full of fire and wind and real connection. We danced barefoot in the sand. We toasted under stars. We stood not as guest and bride, but as sisters finally untangled from the web that held us down for years. No corsages, no stiff seating charts, just light and music, and the feeling of beginning again. The beach was nearly empty by morning. The sky wore that soft blue only seen before sunrise, and the tide had pulled far back, revealing damp sand that sparkled with shell fragments and forgotten footprints. I walked toward the shoreline, the hem of my dress fluttering in the sea breeze, salt clinging to my skin. My hair was a mess, my feet were coated in sand, but I felt light. Behind me, I heard her footsteps. Vanessa. She didn't say anything at first, just walked beside me barefoot, hugging her arms around herself. The mascara was gone, her eyes still puffy but calm. "I barely slept," she murmured. I smiled gently. Neither did the ocean. We stood in silence for a moment, watching the waves inch closer, then retreat. Last night had felt like a movie, but this morning was real. "You looked happy last night," she said softly. "I don't think I've ever seen you like that before." "Free?" I asked, glancing at her. She nodded. "Free, powerful, loved." I bent down, picking up a piece of smooth glass shaped like a teardrop. "I've been that all along," I said, turning it over in my palm. "You just weren't looking." Vanessa closed her eyes, as if my words struck somewhere she hadn't expected. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I know I keep saying it, but God, Chloe, I was so blind." I tucked the sea glass into my pocket. "We were raised to be blind," I said. "They taught us that love was earned. That space in this family was something you competed for." She sank into the sand beside me. "And you were always the threat." I looked at her. "Because I didn't compete, I just existed." She gave a short, sad laugh. "Yeah, you were the one who walked away, the one who built a life without them." "I didn't walk away," I said gently. "They closed the door, I just learned how to breathe without their air." She nodded slowly, eyes glossy again. "I want to build something new with you," she said. "Far away from them, from all that control, from their lies." I sat beside her, letting the surf kiss our toes. "So do I," I said. We watched the morning bloom around us, birds dipping low, soft waves tumbling over one another like children playing tag. A fresh beginning, written in water and light. "No more pretending," she said. "No more choosing silence just to keep peace. And no more measuring our worth by how much space we take up in someone else's story." Vanessa reached for my hand, and this time when she held it, it wasn't as a bride or as a sibling trying to fix something. It was as a sister finally ready to start over. 6 months later, everything looked different. Not in some glossy, movie-ending kind of way. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. I still had laundry piles and work emails and awkward run-ins with extended relatives who didn't know which side they were allowed to speak to. But the silence was gone. The kind of silence that used to follow me like a second skin. That hunger to be seen, to be approved of, to be invited, had disappeared. Vanessa and I lived just blocks apart now. It wasn't planned, not exactly. She'd found a rental on a quiet street shaded by oaks, and a month later I found mine. A second-floor walk-up with sun pouring through the windows in the late afternoon. Every Sunday morning, we took turns hosting brunch. Sometimes it was just us, eggs and coffee and laughter. Sometimes Maya joined. Sometimes Gabe or Ella dropped by with croissants or gossip. But there were no parents, no hovering, no manipulation masquerading as love. We'd drawn that line together and we hadn't looked back. Therapy helped. A lot. We started with joint sessions, which mostly involved Vanessa crying and me trying not to shrink into the couch. Now we both go separately. It's strange how you can spend decades tangled in someone else's expectations and only realize it once you're free of them. One Sunday, while hiking with Maya on a wooded trail just outside Charleston, she paused beside me as the ocean wind swept in from beyond the ridge. "You're different," she said. "Good different. The kind where you stop apologizing for the air you breathe." I laughed. "Turns out sometimes losing your family means finally finding yourself." She raised her brows. "That sounds like something you should put on a bumper sticker." I didn't answer. I just kept walking, boots crunching over gravel, the smell of salt and pine heavy in the air, because it was true. I hadn't lost a family. I had lost the version of myself they demanded I be. And in return, I found something infinitely better. A sister, a chosen community, and the quiet power of being unshakably, unapologetically me. The waves crashed behind us, steady and unbothered. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look back. I looked forward. Thank you for following Chloe's journey. If you've ever had to choose peace over family or found strength in walking away, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more first-person dramas about women finding their voice, their freedom, and their power. Where are you watching from today? Let's talk below.